in 314 for a shooting at Century Theaters. They're saying somebody's shooting in the auditorium.
Roger, keep your fires west of the smoke. You're cleared hot. An officer hit. Send me the world.
Don't go over that fence. Don't go over that fence. Grab the shotgun again.
Welcome to Tactical Tangents.
Welcome back to Tactical Tangents. This is Mike. This episode is brought to you by Ride-On Optics. Ride-On is bringing you high-quality glass at a great value. I use and trust their scopes, binoculars, and red dot sights, and you can too with their unconditional lifetime warranty. If you ever have a problem with their gear, they will replace it, not repair it. Finish up your next build and keep a little extra cash on hand for ammo so you can actually go out and shoot that thing. Find your next optic at rideonoptics.com.
And this is Jim. This episode is also brought to you by ManusX. We've talked a lot about the tactical fantasy on this podcast, and one of the quickest ways to break your tactical fantasies and actually improve your performance is by getting real feedback. One of the ways you can do that is with ManusX. You're not going to get better at shooting on your own. You need practice, data, and coaching. And you need to make the most of your ammo with good live and dry fire training. Manus is a family of training devices that tracks you while you train. It times and tracks everything you do in a drill and coaches you as you go. It is indispensable to taking your shooting to the next level. Go find them on manusx.com.
Hey guys, this is Mike, and I'm sitting down with Dan from Filthy Pirate, Filthy Pirate Coffee, Filthy Pirate Podcast. We're doing a joint episode today. Some of you guys, if you've been listening to Tactical Tangents, our show, you've probably heard of Dan, the Danimal, back in the day. We did some talk about training and stuff. Dan, how's it going?
I'm doing great, Mike. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm sober for this one, so
and thanks for having me on yours. We're going to be posting this to both shows.
Yeah, we are. So you're going to be able to find this episode on Tactical Tangents, obviously, and then on Thin Brewed Line, which is our podcast for Filthy Pirate Coffee. And I'm really looking forward to it. Something hit me, and I really wanted to kind of cover something that I think we have a lot of experience in. And I reached out to Mike. I said, "Hey, what do you think, man? Both audiences could benefit." And you jumped on board. So here we are.
Yeah. So this Washington D.C. law enforcement training incident. It was at a library. There was a training incident where they were doing some baton training that was being run by a retired officer, I guess, and long story short, there was a safety mishap, and the officer was shot and killed. Is the nuts and bolts of it, right?
Yeah, what I can gather is shot and killed by this other officer that was leading this training. So, yeah, that struck a nerve with me really deep, because I just think that, good Lord, the stuff that officers face now is astronomical. Why are we facing death at the hands of our own peers, right? We shouldn't be. Shouldn't be. And it should never happen. That's my mentality, and it was when I was doing training. Officers should never get killed in training. That's your goal. And even injury, it should be minimal. Injuries are going to happen, but it's really hard to prevent all injuries. But man, serious injury and death, that's got to be stopped.
Yeah, so some foundational stuff here for anyone listening that either didn't hear our last episode with Dan or isn't familiar with it from Dan's podcast. Dan was a longtime police officer, police supervisor. He was on SWAT for a number of years, both as an officer and as a team leader. He ran the sniper unit, and after a while, eventually also ran training for the whole agency. All of our in-service training for the department. We're talking about an agency of 800 or so officers. We used to be a little bit bigger than that. Dan took all of his experience from working with special weapons and tactics, again, officer level, team leader level, also as a supervisor in some specialized units, doing some plainclothes stuff.
Correct.
So a lot of experience to bring to bear to now run training for an entire agency. And around the same time that he was starting there, I was also reaching a point of, it was frankly a lot of the origin story of this show was I was at a point in my career of kind of getting frustrated with the things that I was seeing and the things that we were outputting on the training front in terms of, hey, we're not really doing a good job of preparing these guys for the job that we expect of them. And this was, I want to say 2017. It was right after Ferguson, right after Dallas, some of these other things. And the stakes were high, right? And a lot of departments everywhere, and our own as well, were really focused on not making the headlines in a bad way. And Dan was getting put into this position running training at the academy at the department level, and I was like, man, this is a good opportunity for us to for me to be able to say like, hey, I want to help, I want to be part of the solution here, and to bring ideas, but also obviously Dan had a chance to kind of revolutionize what we were doing out there. So we started putting our heads together, and Dan had his whole staff. I was just kind of the guy on the sidelines, that the good idea fairy, I guess. But it relates to this sort of thing. And we've talked a lot on this podcast about training safety. We've talked about some of those incidents and kind of the role of the strategic corporal, if you will, the officer on the front lines that has a chance to make a big impact at the community level or make the agency famous. and so, yeah, it was an interesting time. And so this incident comes, and we see a obviously sad, tragic thing of this officer killed in training, which should never happen. But I think we're both on the same page to be able to say like, yeah, but we've also done enough training to see that you have to fight that attitude, like the complacency that comes with it. It would never happen here, that we're always better than that we're always so squared away and so good that it would never happen, because it can happen, especially when you start doing training at mass, at scale with volume. I mean, you have to fight that complacency, right?
Yeah, I think for training, one of the first things that I did, just when we talk about safety, I know we're going to talk a lot about components of making good quality training, but safety, I had to wrap my mind around like an old analogy of, and I think most officers are taught this, when you go clear a structure that you think has been burglarized or it looks like it's been burglarized, treat it as the person is in there hiding and they're armed, right? That should be your mentality. Not over paranoid and trigger happy, but you are not going in there thinking, oh, they got to be gone. This call's been holding for 3 hours. That's the worst thing you can do. The same thing applies to training. There's a human factor, right?
Yeah.
What can go wrong will go wrong. What can be a safety violation, it will be there if you're not looking for it and finding it and fixing it. So safety wise, I even told myself, even the best of the best, even your most brightest, sharpest officers, tactical people that are helping you train, or they're part of the student core group, you have to just take in consideration, without insulting them, that shit happens, right? Things happen. I'll tell you a good example, just to kind of bring this to light. In the defensive tactics room, arrest and control tactics, we're getting ready to do some stuff. We safety check everyone. No weapons allowed. Empty gun belt per se. You got your little blue gun. And I've always made it a habit of the staff that worked with me checking pockets, looking for knives, looking for something sharp that could poke the student, and we found a 25 caliber small handgun.
Oh, Jesus.
On an officer. And I'm not faulting. It was, the person carried it concealed. And that's how, because we were training in plain clothes at that time with a gun belt, those variables led in there. But had we not checked his pockets, like some officers say, you're treating me like a criminal or a suspect. I'm so glad we did. What if that gun would have went off on, by accident? I don't know what a 25 Raven has for. I have another question. Why would you carry that? But that's a whole nother episode. So anyway, you get my point. I drive that home, not to bash on anybody. I've been guilty of it. I've done stuff. I've walked in with a live weapon and not paid attention. It can happen. And the point of that whole conversation is your mind should be that way. If there's a human factor, if it can happen, it will happen. I have to think that it's going to, and I'm going to work through that to make sure it doesn't.
Yeah, it's a layered approach, right? And it's hard to identify every possible risk. Like you mentioned, people are going to get hurt in training. It's going to happen. We have to try to mitigate those things. And especially if we're talking about something like a gun, right? Like that's a big deal. We that level of mishap must be stopped at all costs. And you're constantly doing that risk analysis of, well, I'm willing to let someone like twist a knee or twist an ankle, but I'm not willing to let someone get shot. That's totally preventable. And it can also be a challenge even when you look at things like, do I bring simunitions or marking cartridges or something? Like blue guns there's a lot of things that blue guns can't help us learn and practice. And if you're trying to run a scenario, for example, where you want the person to feel like, hey, there's a real possibility of me having to use this thing, you have to add that realism in, and it all comes with risks, right? So there's a lot that gets wrapped up into the safety aspect of it. And I think, not to make this like a whole training safety episode, but from the perspective that we're bringing this from our experience, I think is we want training to be practical and challenging, and I don't want to say necessarily fun because it's not about entertainment, but you want people to be engaged and enjoy training and get something out of it, So there's a lot of work to be done, but you have to start with, this can't happen. Like there's enough risks associated with this job, going to work every day, out in the field. No one should have to go into training worried about, am I going to come out of this alive?
Yeah.
So it's a big balance, and that has to be the overarching theme of it.
Yeah. The best piece of advice I got years ago, and so all the things that I think we're going to talk about, it's not something that I came up with, the majority of them. These are things that were passed down to me from other great trainers.
Oh yeah, we rob and steal that stuff for a living.
Yeah, I mean we're professional thieves.
I've taken lots of good ideas from Dan over the years as a
and you should, right? That's what it's about.
As my mentor, that was his job, was to give me those things.
Absolutely, you leave the place better than you found it, and you hope that the next group leaves it better than what they got from you, right? And I actually said this to a boss, and we're going to kind of talk about the quality of training and the safety and what kind of flags might trigger things to get out of control. And we had a boss that's like, I want this, this, and this, and I want it yesterday, and this is what we want to do, and we're going to change the world, and all ambitious. And I felt the same way. But I said, okay, you have 3 options here. You can only pick 2 of them because that's just how it works. It's not my thing. It's the way it is. Do you want this training to be done fast? Do you want it to be great? Or do you want it to be cheap? Pick 2.
Yeah.
You can't have all 3. It's just not going to work.
Yep.
In our case, in late 2016, when I was chosen to go out and do in-service training as the supervisor, I was pretty much given, and this is the one thing that I really enjoyed about that mission initially was we were given an open checkbook. So cheap. I mean, we bought 2 Vertras, a multiple, all kinds of blank guns and, simunitions and, the laser tag kind of pistols. I can't remember what they were called, but they basically
stress vest.
Yeah. They shock you if, it emits a laser from force on force. So we had a lot of stuff.
But importantly, the staff.
The staff. Yeah.
Like you had the people and the, overtime or comp time or whatever you needed to pay those people to come out and do the work because it's labor intensive.
Well, so initially none of that was on the table, right? This is what prompted the conversation was they wanted everything. They wanted, this awesome training. They wanted it yesterday and with what you have now. And I was like, well, okay, here's the problem. You're saying to me in your own words that the 1 10-hour training day that we did as an agency for many, many, many years was no longer adequate. Agreed.
Right.
Agreed.
10 hours a year is not enough.
Not enough. We did the math on it. It was less than 1% of your work year hours were committed to your professional
Take out an hour 15 for lunch.
And that's for the average officer. Most officers go out and seek other training, so there's more involved in that. But as a basic standard, it was pretty low. And I said, well, okay, you want to change the standard, but you want to bump up from a ribeye to a T-bone, but you don't want to pay the price of the T-bone. And you don't want to wait the extra time it is to get that T-bone on that plate in the condition you want it. So what are we going to do here? I can't work miracles. And so fortunately with some very emotional pleading from my part and some curse words, we were able to come to a happy ground and invest some money, invest some time, beef up the staff. One of the things we did right away, I was like, I can't train anybody if my trainers aren't quality. You just can't, period. And so we invested in trainers like Mike. I pretty much attached to Mike right away, in you being a really good sounding board. You had the experience, you had the knowledge. there was a couple others. I had I don't know, maybe 6 to 10 people that were super motivated, quality cops that had the experience, knowledge, and ability to teach. Notice how I said all of that, right? Because you'll have instructors that have different levels of abilities, but the ones I put closest to me were what I viewed as good or better than what I can do. And so that was really helpful because they were able to find problems that I wasn't looking at. And I think that was probably one of the best successes that attributed to what would later, transpire.
So like there's so much to unpack in that because first of all, one of the big things is, so you get the right guy in the job, right? You get Dan out there at the academy and he's in charge of the in-service training. And you'll notice that one of the first challenges was having to lead up, right?
Yeah.
Having to influence, hey, chief, not only do I need the line item on the budget, but I also need the people and the staffing, right? So there's a leading up component to it, which is a big deal. Like getting the right people in the right positions means you have to listen to those people too, right? And then I remember that core group of us that were starting to write some of these scenarios and do all that. None of that happens in a vacuum either, because you have this, you're like, oh, I'm going to do this scenario. It's going to be great. And everyone is going to do exactly what I think they're going to do when they walk in that room. Nope.
Not even close.
And so there was a whole lot of it where, we would have to put our heads together, like, well, what if they do this or what if they do that? Or, I remember there was a couple where you're like, oh, it's going to be like the shoot, no shoot scenario. Well, what happens when you get that one squared away guy that's like, well, I don't think it's a shoot scenario, so I'm going to put that guy through a wall. And you're like, well, that could happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
The odds are X. And so we have to okay, what can I put in between them and that? Or what can I put behind them so that we can soften that blow a little bit? Or what ground rules can I set? Because, you don't want to make it so rule intensive that you're hamstringing the guys going through the training or the scenario, right? So you had to have a group of people that could put their heads together, and we would do test runs of scenarios.
Yeah, I was going to bring up pressure testing. Yeah. If you're going to do reality-based training in law enforcement or even military, but I could speak exclusively in law enforcement, corrections, whatever, you need to pressure test your scenarios. Pick a good group of role players, a good group of candidates to go through it. Everybody knows that you're going to go through these, it's kind of like a train the trainers in a sense, but it's actual testing of it before we get to training all of our trainers. And we did that. And man, we found out some amazing stuff, whether it was, the quality of the training or, the variables that you didn't factor in, because if you put 6 or 7 bright cops through the same scenario, you're probably going to get 6 or 7 different variations. So, 2 or 3 are going to be similar on one side, 2 or 3 are going to be similar on the other, but you'll have, a lot of things to evaluate. And then you come back together as a group and, one of the first things you go, is this training relevant? Yeah, it's great. It's awesome. Is this something you're only training once in a million? Or is this something that could happen every day? i.e., one of the examples we did was an ambush from a traffic stop. You roll up, and the driver of the vehicle or passenger, whatever that you are dealing with, immediately exits the car and puts you under fire. And obviously we're working on big components of getting off the X, identifying the threat, returning fire, and then working through the problem from there, right? So that could happen to any cop in this country or in the world and on any given day. So that was a relevant kind of training that we did. Lo and behold, we actually had an officer go through that very thing, and I had a conversation with him, and I said, did that training that we did last year help you? And he said, 100%. This was a combat veteran too, by the way, combat veteran Marine telling me that the training they did. So I thought that was an important part of pressure testing. The second part is, do we have most of the variables that we think we're going to come into contact, and how are we going to train this? And, talking about the methodology of delivering a message or a training value point. And then lastly is is this damn thing safe? What's going to get broken? Who's going to get broken? Right. Who's going to get pissed off because there's blank gunfire that they didn't know about, and the fire academy comes out screaming at you because they're running a class and you're ripping an AK-47 outside their door. Those things that make the training that can cause hiccups and be unsafe. And we learned a lot through the pressure testing. So, long-winded answer to that whole part is pressure test, pressure test, pressure test. If you come to me and said, hey, in theory, I've got this scenario, I'm going to point to my door and tell you get the fuck out. Because in theory means you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You don't. None of us do, right? It's just in theory, based on my experience, it should come out like this. But without actually doing it, you don't know. And so you got to do it. If you can, please don't run any training without pressure testing to some degree.
And the key in this is you don't just do the testing, identify the weaknesses or the gaps or whatever, and then go, we're just going to run with it. Like, you have to tweak it. You have to be open-minded and willing to adjust. And this is one of those things where, from a leadership standpoint, from higher up, maybe above Dan's level, you'd run into these challenges. I remember some of these kind of bureaucratic, political challenges that we would have, where we would have to adjust things. And you want your training to be consistent. So before you launch this thing, you have to work all those kinks out ahead of time. And for example, you talked about, is it relevant? Is this something that can happen? Is this a high frequency, low severity sort of thing? Or is this a low frequency, high severity sort of thing? The ambush on a traffic stop is a good example. And I remember running into some of these obstacles where, like, hey, there's a lot of like shoot, no shoot type of scenarios. We can't be conditioning people to constantly be in these gunfights, because the reality is those are low frequency events. So we had to balance that and teach people how to be adaptable. That was one of the big points of the training. It was all about going from one extreme to the other on any given day, any given shift, any given call, any given stop, contact, whatever. You might just have to use your talking skills. You might go from a shooting and then have to go into, caring for a victim of some violent crime or something like that. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about those challenges and how you would advocate and lead for those things, because I remember that traffic stop scenario as an example, and hearing from the officer, because I talked to him at one point as well after hearing that story. And he said, yeah, I think that traffic stop programmed me for a favorable outcome. And to me, that was huge. I mean, that's, he saved his own life. I'm not going to sit there and say that the training.
He did the work. Yeah, no doubt about it. And by all accounts,
but it makes it worth it is the thing, right? Like, that was the
might
payout.
Not have survived that. Those that don't know, basically the bad guy got out and just lit the patrol car up with bullets all in the driver's side area. But our amazing, solid officer, I don't even know if he still works for the agency.
He does.
I hope he's
does. Actually out at the academy.
I hope he's
right
a cop somewhere.
He's at the academy. He's a class officer out there.
And he should be. Yeah. He's a good dude.
Yeah.
But
Agreed.
He jumped out and he did his thing. And so, the training did have some really good. I mean, one of our goals for training too is you have to kind of look at. We're talking about bureaucracy, right? We're talking about red tape, and man, we sure hit a lot of it. And it evolved from the 2017 to the time in 2020 when I left. It evolved dramatically in a lot of different ways, good and bad. But you have to ask your bosses, what do you want to achieve out of this? And, of course, I had my mission from the chief. And I was like, okay, I know what you want. I know what my bosses below the chief to me want and what they want to gain out of this. And fortunately, the captain of the training division was a pretty awesome dude. And he gave me a lot of room. And he only asked that we do it for the right reasons. 10-4. And the right reasons to me for training was, number one, we do everything in our power to keep cops alive. Everything that every dollar that we have, every hour that we have, every personnel we can throw at this to keep cops alive. Number two, let's keep them employed. Let's keep them in a favorable working status. And number three, let's keep them out of jail, incarceration. As we all know, in this profession, unfortunately, it seems like you can get indicted really, really quickly for just about anything as a cop, and it sucks that it came down to, I think, the pendulum swinging so hard. There's a balance, right? Nobody hates a cop, or dirty cop, more than a clean cop, right? Or whatever that term is. But so, I told the bosses, this is my goal. I'm not going to promote. I have no ambition to promote. I have no ambition to advance to a higher level. My internal reasons were to keep the cops alive, keep them employed, and keep them out of jail. And I think by telling the staff that, and the trainers, and the all the cadre that were involved, and the bosses, it's kind of hard to argue with that one.
Right.
There's really, well, yeah, no. I know you don't want a cop to die, but it's too expensive.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that, my man.
Yeah.
And so,
well, there's clarity you can always bring to the table with that.
Yeah.
Like you said.
Going back to, what do you want? Do you want a great training? Do you want fast training? Do you want cheap training? You can't have all of them.
Right.
And over time, we spent a lot of money. Let's take the pressure testing scenario. To bring in a few trainers that were quality, like you and a handful of others, and bring in quality role players, bring in quality students that are going to participate in this pressure test. That was all on overtime most of the time, or some time a compensatory time or something like that. But it wasn't always on their duty hours. It's not free. It's not free. Was it worth it? Every penny. Yeah. Every penny. In lots of ways. And so bureaucracy was tough. The other thing too was, and I'm not faulting them, some folks made a career choice to really to go to the next level. And sometimes, and I say this for all bosses to consider when you're trying to put on some training, and let's say you're just trying to do this whole police reform thing, right? Or whatever it is, or just we need to progress in our professional development. You have to keep in mind that you got to let this thing grow organically, right? You're not going to get this overnight. Nothing happens fast in the cop world.
Inertia.
And I know you want change today. And I know, and I agree with it. You don't want to be a headline. You don't want to be a Minneapolis. You don't want to be a Ferguson. You don't want to be all the, and I'm not faulting I'm not putting blame. I'm just saying you don't want to be a headline in any of these situations. I mean, you look at Uvalde right now. Right. There's a big training component, right? It's got to be. I don't know all the answers, but you look at it and you go, okay, there's something was greatly missed here. And so as a boss, you have to say, what am I doing? What are we trying to achieve here? And you also have to be patient. I'm not a very patient person, but in this case I was, because I knew I've coached football for a long time. I've coached people. I've seen how the mind reacts to mentoring and leading and developing. And we were able to, over time, I think it took us about a good solid year, 18 months, convince all of our bosses, like, okay, these guys got their shit together. They're working their butts off. They're putting out some quality training. We may not like everything, but they're putting out some quality training. So that organic change, you got to be in it for the long haul. Well, the long haul.
And it's a point of, we're talking about a big sphere of influence, right? When you're running in-service training for an entire agency, but you don't influence the entire agency at once, like you said. And I remember being out there, and part of this instructor development portion of it, which was a big deal, was there were some specific things. I remember coming to you and saying like, hey, we need to do scenarios like this or that or the other thing. And you're like, dude, I can't, who am I going to get to run these? And we're like, well, we can't just use SWAT guys, because SWAT guys are always, they're always at training. They're always on call. They're always running off. And so getting pulled.
They're putting on their tight T-shirts.
Right,
I know.
Right.
I can talk shit because I was one of them.
But it's like, well, we have to train these other people.
Yeah.
You can't always rely on the guys that are out there doing the job to be the only ones to teach the job. There's a balance, and you're not going to get the experience overnight. And I remember specifically seeing, we would start doing some of these test runs of the scenarios that we wanted to run, bringing people out and putting them through the scenarios to see what are we missing, what needs to be tweaked. And you would have people who would maybe not perform that well, and it was a reality check for them. And with a good instructor and a good evaluator to give them meaningful feedback that wasn't critical, wasn't harsh, wasn't mean. I mean, it was truthful where it needed to be, but in a positive way, like, hey, this is what right looks like. We want to get you there. Let's run it again. And you'd have a lot of people that came out of that saying like, hey, I want to help. Like I want to be, and so they would, I remember some people who weren't super proficient as far as like tactics and officer safety type stuff became the instructors.
Yeah.
And they turned their whole, mentality around on some of that. And you see them out at training all the time. And it really was a culture shift, I feel like, at in-service training. I mean, prior to that, it was a lot of attitudes, a lot of complaining and bitching.
Yeah,
and
so
stuff.
let's back it up to about 2014, and I'll just kind of highlight my experience with training and where we were. I had a guy take off his gun belt and his shirt. This is a supervisor, veteran supervisor, 25 years, want to fight me in the parking lot over some simunitions. True story. And those that know.
I wasn't going to bring it up, but I was alluding to it.
Dude wanted to fight me because he got shot with simunitions because he didn't use cover appropriately. Never mind. This was a firearms instructor. But it was the reason I'm going here was he knew better. He knew what he was doing. He was a well-versed cop, but his ego was there. It was big. It was big as day on the table. So was mine. And one of the things I had to learn was these are people. And we all learn it different ways. And I was really proud of our instructor crew. Down to your basic instructors that maybe didn't do a lot of tactics, but could teach a class, could teach other components, all the way up to the guys that were whiz-bang tactical gurus. You could throw anything at them. They could teach it. They knew it and they could teach it. There's two parts to this. You can be a badass, but a horrible instructor. And I've been a bad instructor and I've been a great instructor. So I know what the two look like. And it was really important to me to really cultivate the instructors because they're going to bring good quality material. They're going to bring good quality safety. You can have 50 people that are out there for the overtime and somebody's going to get hurt and training's going to suck. Or you can have 50 people that enjoy the overtime but really enjoy what you're doing, what the mission is, and they want to be part of that. That doesn't happen overnight. Doesn't happen in 6 months, unfortunately.
Nope. And that's the inertia thing, like you said. I think that's a huge thing is to tailor your expectations and your boss's expectations. Because going back to your it can be good, it could be cheap, it could be, and you can't have all of those things. And going back to that is having the buy-in from your bosses is one side of the equation, and then getting the buy-in from the other people to want to do the work is another side of it. People going to training and actually coming out of it saying like, hey, that was really good training. Like I feel good. I feel like I learned something. I feel like it was challenging and relevant. And like I said, like fun or entertaining isn't really the word, but they feel like growth happened, and that just brings a positive attitude. Your instructors have to have that, and it's really easy to overwork those guys, right? I know I was one of them for a while. So you have to have buy-in. There's like 3 or 4 different dimensions to get buy-in from, and that's hard to get all of it. This is Mike, and I just want to jump in real quick to announce our new partnership with Brink Drones. Brink has created life-saving capabilities in a drone that can break windows, fly into houses and confined spaces, and even crash into things and stay in the air with advanced pilot assistance that does not use GPS. Brink drones are built in the USA. It has night vision and IR that can function in blacked out and zero light conditions. It can flip itself back over, and it is a flying cell phone with two-way communication and a live video feed. It can even carry and drop off items for hostage negotiators with the payload feature. Brink has a really cool and compelling heritage that came to be after the 1 October mass shooting at Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas, and they are committed in their mission to leverage technology to save lives. And I can tell you firsthand that their drones will do just that by flying into places that are too dangerous to risk human lives. If you work in public safety, your agency needs to see what this drone can do. Go check out Brink Drones at brinkdrones.com, or feel free to reach out to us, and we'd be happy to tell you all about them. Again, that's Brink, BRINC, drones.com.
Yeah, and so kind of a great point, right? Because there's obviously, I don't know the number, but let's say a dozen people that I leaned on really heavy. I had to. I can't teach everything. I can't run everything. I can't do all that stuff. In fact, if you're in, and this is a great point, if you're in charge of training, like my role was, chief says this, and it's your job to deliver it, get it out there, and I would turn over the safety to someone I trusted. You are a safety guy today. You're going to have all the safety officers.
Manage your bandwidth.
Yeah. And then Mike, you know this shit very well. I want you to teach this to our train the trainer instructors. And it allowed, it's the old rule of leadership. You surround yourself with great minds, and the rest is, history. It'll take care of itself. And so I did that. I surrounded myself. It took me a while to gain more and more. You have to gain the trust of people.
Doesn't happen overnight.
It doesn't happen overnight, but it's super important, because if you are trying to run safety and you're trying to teach a class, someone's going to get killed. Period. You can't do it. You shouldn't do it. Yeah. And we learned a lot.
If you think you can do both, you'll prove yourself wrong before long, and hopefully not at someone's expense, right? Because that's the thing.
Absolutely. And you also have to keep in mind the training that goes into we're speaking about reality-based training. The training that goes into an active shooter style training is really complex. It's easy for me to run it because I've done it so many times, but it's very complex. And there's a lot of working parts in it compared to you're going to run a scenario station that involves a officer and their backup and 1 or 2 role players and an instructor or 2, right? And we did the round robin thing where we'd have 5 or 6 of those scenario stations. And we did shoot, no shoot. We did simple as this is just an investigation. It could be a medical situation. It could be lots of variables, and keep that training. Like, you don't want to have 6 shoot, no shoots situations. You're just setting yourself up for some dangerous things, but you want to be productive in that. So surround yourself with the right people. I had those real close folks, and I think that grew from, starting with 1 or 2 to 6 or 8 to 20 or 30, and maybe even more by the end. One of the things I did fairly on, and this gave people a lot of uncomfortable stuff, but it helped gain trust. We had quite a few instructors that were from internal affairs. They were, at that time when I was running that, we had some really good people in internal affairs. And I say good meaning solid cops with experience, knowledge, background of things that were well-versed. And I involved them in the training in the sense of they were trainers, not there to watch necessarily. They were involved in the training. You own this too,
Yeah. Well, that's
right.
And that's huge because people would be uncomfortable at face value. I could see that in saying like, well, I don't want to do anything wrong around these guys because they're going to be the ones that I'm going to be in trouble over. But no, you want those people to see the gaps in training.
Yeah.
And you want them, like you said, you're involved in the training. So when people start screwing up, like you have you played a role in that.
Right.
So, and you play a role in their growth and preventing the mess ups too, preventing the mistakes.
My biggest thing for doing that was twofold. Prior to me going out there, we had an incident on the driving track that someone got run over, and there were some faults in the program that got overlooked. No one in particular's fault. There were some bright people out there. It just happened. And it shouldn't have happened. And it was just things that were overlooked. And when I took over, internal affairs was still trying to wrap that thing up, and they had a lot of questions. And I was like, well, it'd been nice if you guys were out here to see, occasionally what happens on the driving track with a recruit class. And so I did the same for AOT. I was like, you guys need to see this. You need to see what our people can do, good and bad. You need to
What's the baseline?
Yeah, you need to see how humans react to stress. Not everything is black and white.
I have a good example of that one.
Right? You need to see the things that go on and how the machine works. And by the way, we had good quality trainers in that internal affairs group. And that was just one group. We pulled from SWAT. We used K9 heavily. Our K9 guys were super sharp, and they loved training.
Some of them were okay.
Yeah, and I'm not just here tooting Mike's horn, but the K9 guys I really enjoyed working with them. And having them, and I had confidence in them. Loved having those guys out. We had our firearms staff from the academy involved. We had general instructors and defensive tactics instructors and people with different instructor certifications, even fitness. We did some fitness stuff out there, and I caught a lot of shit for that. Blown out knees on the wall and this and that. Well, it's not the wall.
It's a physical job.
It's a physical job. It's part of it, And so anyway, we had a lot of components. It was very diverse. We spent a lot of time training them. I know, Mike, you and I put on lots of classes for instructors, whether it was actual teaching or was stress management, stress inoculation, those types of things. We even brought in a doctor who was a PhD in education out of the Phoenix area that was probably one of the most well-versed teachers I've ever seen in my life. And he was a super nice guy, and he loved cops. So why not bring him in? Pay him. Teach us how to teach. And he did. He brought another component into it. And now, granted, his was more on the academia side for your PowerPoint lesson plan and classroom environment.
But that's part of it.
But there was a nice thing that he brought to the table about just the human element of understanding why people retain stuff and why they don't. And maybe they don't retain stuff because you suck as an instructor,
right?
Or you're being an asshole, or they're just tired, whatever.
You just don't know what you don't know. And that was the thing he was able to, I remember that course, one of the big things that came out of that was he talked about the normal distribution, the bell curve of people in a class as far as like their IQ goes. And what it related closely to was lowest common denominator training. And he framed that in a way for me that turned the needle, because in a nutshell, he said, you know, in a group of, you have your, 30 students in a room, right? And their average IQ is whatever number. And you've got on either side of that average, 15 people on one side, 15 people on the other side, and that whole bell curve distribution of people. If you train to the lowest common denominator, right, the lowest end of that, then you're only training those 4 or 5 people on that end of the curve. If you train to the average, you're only training half the room. You're only teaching half the room. If you train to a higher level, now everyone gets something out of the training, including the guys on the right side of that curve, guys and gals on the right side of that curve at the high end of the room. And that's where you see the whole room advance, the whole status quo advance. And it was a light bulb moment for me when we talk about lowest common denominator training and saying, well, I understand that we need the accountability at this baseline, but if you want to see growth, you have to train above that. And that was a huge point from that guy that I took.
Oh, yeah. And so it's funny you mentioned that part, because I just read an article that was not an article. It was a post, a social media written by a SWAT commander from somewhere in the country. I don't even know. I got so irritated reading this thing, because basically in a synopsis, he said that training to the highest level means you can't hold people accountable. There's no measurement for accountability. Let's say a perfect pistol score is 250, and we're always trying to get to a 250. Well, no, his theory is you should be happy with the 210, because if they don't make the 210, then they can't carry a gun and walk the streets protecting their community. That should be good enough. I couldn't disagree anymore. Unequivocally. I was sad that it was a SWAT person saying that. There should be standards and benchmarks and so forth. But I always looked at it as, look, if I got a class of 30 people, and let's say the 250 is the perfect score that you can get, and that's what we're shooting for. And if someone shoots a 200, well, guess what? That's on me now to work and work and work and work with this person and give them a little extra, attention to get to that level. Not say, that's cool, bro. 210's good. It looks like you shot it with double out buck, but hey, it's cool. And the expectations, if you walk into a football team and say, I expect you just to kind of win the game by a field goal, 3 points, that's good enough. But that's not going to get you into the playoffs, my friend, because playoffs are all based on points that you accumulate throughout the year, right? Same thing to policing is that's not going to get you to the playoffs baseline, standards. So 100%, if you're, and now this is a growth thing too, and also organic. It takes time to go, all right, our 210 shooter is now shooting a 215. Cool. Let's keep working. Maybe we'll only ever get a 225 out of them, but that's sure as hell better than a 210. And it gave them confidence in all the other things that they're going to do. They probably have things that they do in their job they're very good at that they're now even more confident in because they achieved something they're not very good at. And that's all on you as an instructor, as an agency, as a boss. Also, if you're a cop listening to this, it's on you to come into training with the right mindset. You can't come in there as and unfortunately I've been to trainings, and I think most cops have around the country, where you're like, holy Jesus, what are we doing here? And I've had a couple where I walked out halfway through the day. I walked out and said, I'm not part of this anymore. Yeah. This is so bad. And I'm not saying that from an egotistical standpoint. I'm saying that as I don't want to train myself bad ways, and this is bad. So You have to come into training with the right mindset that I'm willing to accept feedback, challenge myself, and I'm going to be humble about it and understand that I'm human and I screw up. Cops hate reality-based scenarios.
They're on the spot. Yep.
Except for K9 and SWAT and your bomb guys, your tactical guys who do these things all the time and they're comfortable with them. In general, most cops hate it. They'll go do live, they'll do it. What is it? Fuck it. We'll do it live out on the streets. But man, you put me in a room full of other cops in a safe environment. I just get all worked up over it. Like I said, going back to the guy who wanted to fight me,
Yeah.
So changing the mindset of your instructors, changing the mindset of your bosses, changing the mindset of your audience is huge. You got to do them all. You can't just pick one and hope for the best. The mindset has to change culturally throughout the agency, and they have to accept that this is where we're at. And that kind of plays a role into the safety side too. We have to accept that there is no room for error in safety. Let me give you an example. You're putting on a scenario, and it's whatever. It could be use of force, could be it's officers engaging in practical, connection with role players. And in comes the big boss, and he's walking up to you as the lead instructor. Now everyone's been, de-weaponized, if you will. And in comes the boss, and he's got a handgun in his holster, a live handgun. What do you do? Well, that happened to me multiple times. And I turn, hey, sir, love to have you here. Thank you for showing up. We need to put your gun in a safe place for everyone's safety.
Yeah.
No one understands that more than a boss, right? They just aren't always around training to understand the nuances of what you're doing and how you set it up. You can't be afraid to tell that boss, no guns, right? Because here's what's going to happen. Is the boss going to pull out his gun and accidentally shoot someone? Most likely not, because he's not even involved in the scenario. He's just a looky-loo observer. But what you just told everyone was the rules apply to you, but not him and not her, not him, not her, whoever's showing up. The rules apply to everyone across the board, regardless of rank. That's something that most tacticians understand because that's how they train. You have to make sure that safety is imperative because it does affect all the other parts of the training.
Well, and it's not just that it's about the rules and enforcing the rules because the rules are the rules. It's also because, hey, whether you're a chief or an officer or a detective or a sergeant, correct is correct, right? And so when you walk into a room and you make an improper decision, it doesn't matter fundamentally what your rank is if you didn't do the right thing.
Yeah.
So, and it's a point for instructor development and leadership as well, is offering that feedback in a constructive way and being willing to set aside your own ego. Maybe it's embarrassing to call out one of your chiefs, but if they did something incorrect, your job is to teach them.
Yeah.
Just because, an administrator doesn't mean you're the same thing as a trainer or a teacher or instructor or even a proficient operator / officer or whatever you want to call yourself. Administrators, managers often are different things. And I'm not saying that to hate on, I'm not saying that, commanders aren't any good at, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that those are different. Yeah. We're talking about different tasks, different levels of expertise, different aptitude, right? Yeah. Some people who are very, very good at administrivia are not your hitters. They're not your doers.
Right.
And that's okay. That's part of the balance. But when you're the instructor, you have to be willing to say, hey, sir, this is how you fucked up. And that's part of your own ego as an instructor as well. And if you can do that well, you'll find that your commanders will be responsive to that. I remember one of the scenarios that we ran, and it was a beautiful moment because it was early on when we were doing some of this training and we were doing the instructor development side of it, where we would have these newer, younger instructor evaluator types running scenarios, and they'd shadow the more experienced of us, right? So I remember I was kind of watching one of these younger instructors. They were shadowing me, and I was trying to help build them up or whatever. And we had a commander go through a scenario. He walked into a room. There's a guy with a gun. He was working with another officer as like his backup or his partner or whatever. And in the debrief, he goes, well, what did you have? And he's like, I walked in there. I saw the guy with the gun. I tried to give him some commands. I wanted to tell my backup to do X, Y, and Z. And I just couldn't get the words out. The stress I just couldn't, I just kind of froze. I couldn't get the words out. And I'm sitting there in my head. I'm like, oh man, this is such a good opportunity, because for one thing, it's an opportunity to show the commander, who on any given day is the one evaluating my use of force or his use of force or someone else's use of force, and handing down the discipline.
Yeah. By the way, it's all on paper or video or audio, right? This isn't real time, 3-dimensional that they're reviewing this.
Yeah. And so and now they're going to sit there and they're going to review some decision that I made and hand me discipline over it. So this is a great opportunity.
Or indictment. Or,
So I'm thinking like, man, this is a good thing for the commander needs to learn this. Like, it's not that easy, is it?
We had a good experience with some commanders coming through. I was really happy to see them come through. And one in particular, I remember where he just said, I really screwed the pooch on that one. And I know better and I shouldn't have done that. Let's do it again. And I remember that specific incident because I think what he sold to everybody there, and then everybody those people told, because they did, because we're cops, that's what we do.
We talk a lot.
Yeah. What he told them was, I'm not infallible. I'm not perfect. And I value what you guys do out there every day, to the point where I showed up for training and I went through it. So if you're a boss, please go to the trainings. One, you're probably required by your state certification to have some training hours. Two, it's important for your own professional development to always stay connected to what is the way the job is done.
Not just get your name on the roster.
Yeah. And then number three is you're sending a message to everyone that you work with that you care about what we're doing as a group here and what public service, right? Conversely, I've seen bosses of various ranks, from my own peers, from sergeant, and it was kind of really bad in that rank, all the way up where they didn't want to make a mistake in front of subordinates, or whatever you want to call them. I don't even like that word. It sounds weird, but they didn't want to make mistakes. And I was like, no, make mistakes. Cops understand that.
Be human, man. Yeah.
What they don't understand is you don't want to do the training because you think you're better. Like, I'm a boss, so I'm just going to sit here and watch you guys do defensive tactics in the room. You just told everyone in here that this training isn't valuable for me to waste my time with it. But I'll watch you guys do it.
Yeah.
It's really not a good thing. So if I could encourage, if you want training to be good, safe, productive, on the mark, participate in it, make mistakes. It's okay. Hopefully you've got the cadre and staff and trainers that know how to deliver. Hey, sir, you fucked up in this. Hey, ma'am, let's try it this way. What do you think about this? And the reason we're going to do it this way is because we want this to be the outcome, or this to be the whatever the case is. So again, if those that know me real well, delivery is not always my best,
Same.
thing, but it's something I worked on. So, if you're a boss, get involved.
Well, and like I said earlier, you have to get buy-in from all these different angles. You want your instructors to feel ownership and pride in the program that you're running. You want your bosses to buy into it and to have faith that because this is not an outcome or results based thing. This is the process.
Yeah.
This is how you manufacture. Your instructors have to engineer and manufacture the good outcomes, and that's a process. It doesn't just happen by chance.
Yeah, that's a great point. Kind of going back to bosses, supervisors, internal affairs, whoever, just understand that because Mike and Dan attended XYZ training, that they're good to go. That one training, they're good to go. They know the rules, no striking to the head. I'm just using that as an example, right? Well, why did they strike to the head? They had the training, they were there. Well, there might be, there's a lot of components involved in that. So just understand that training, like Mike said, it's an ongoing thing, and it's going to evolve, and it's going to grow. And hopefully if you're doing it right, you're going from, that whole crawl, walk, run kind of thing. And that, I do believe that's important. And everyone's at different levels in there, right? My crawling might be a little faster than yours, or I might be a little slower than that person's crawling, and so forth. And so it's your job as a trainer to kind of watch that and understand that the way Mike does it may not be the next guy. or gal that walks through the door for that exact same scenario. So just having that in your mindset that as a boss, yes, they did attend the training, and yes, they were told not to do X, Y, and Z, which I'm not a big fan of telling people what not to do, right? There's got to be a small part in that, but you need to tell people the correct way to do things. Positive self-talk, positive influence is going to be much more productive than, hey, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this.
Teach them what to do.
Right.
Not
exactly.
what not.
Because you don't want to imprint the brain. And there's a whole nother class, and I'm sure Mike's talked about, the OODA loop, and don't even call it a loop. It's not a loop. But anyway, we'll get into other stuff later on. It's just how you imprint the brain, and you want good, positive, safe, productive training imprinted in the brain.
Well, that's one of the things about recurring or in-service training is how much time do you spend going back and reiterating things that you've already done? Because sometimes people need to be taught something more than once.
Yeah.
And at the same time, they might, as you hit a lesson over and over and over again, they might pick up little things, even though they've already been taught something, they didn't retain all of it, right? There might be another 5%, they might get an extra 5% each time they do it. But then at some point, you also have to say like, okay, well, now we're going to take it to a new level. We've already checked these boxes. We've already hit these things. We have to build on that. That's a foundation. You don't stop there. You have to build up to something new. And I'll use your example earlier of the 200 shooters versus the 250 shooters. If you're only teaching people how to get from 200 to 210, your 250 shooters are never going to, you're teaching them about sights and trigger. You're never building on your 250 shooters.
Yeah.
And if you build your 250 shooters and your 230 and your 240, then ultimately those are the people that are going to be able to help those 200 shooters break past their plateaus. And you don't even have to necessarily do some of that work because there's a whole bunch of people in between that can help them.
There's like kind of a subconscious group learning thing that's going on depending on how you craft it, right? You tell this group of shooters who are 250, okay, that's cool. You shot a 250 with your primary, hand. Now we're going to use your support hand and shoot on, we're going to reverse this. So right-handed shooters, you're going to shoot left-handed. Yeah. What's to lose? As long as it's safe, you're challenging them and you're building confidence. They're like, holy shit, I hit the target at 25 yards with my left hand.
And you know what they learn from that too is, and obviously this is kind of a specific example, but it forces them to be a student and again from the perspective of, hey, I have like this baseline level of knowledge or expertise or whatever, but now I have to apply it as a rookie again, or I have to apply it as a brand new student again, and you can kind of reshape the way you might teach or approach something because you've had to look at it from like, okay, how do I build my grip left-handed? Right. How do I work my draw left-handed? Because I've never had to do this
now.
Yeah, like I've never had to do this before, and so it forces you to process it in a way that for however many years you haven't had to do. And there's a lot to be said about how to teach something when you have to learn again.
Yeah.
And that's the best teachers are always the forever students. And I think most of us, and that's culturally, I think K9 and SWAT guys, anyone in a specialized unit like that, even firearms instructors, the best instructors are the ones that go out and they seek training as a student because they understand that as you grow and you learn more, it makes you a better teacher.
Great example of that a few years back when the red dots came into the game, right?
Yep.
And anyone that has their weight worth in firearms world knows that going from iron sight handgun to red dots, it's a little bit tricky. And not saying, and there's different things. And you got to relearn. You have to kind of start over again a little bit. And guess what? You also have to put the good quality repetitions in to build that, whatever that term, muscle memory nonsense that is got lots of different names to it. But you get the point. Yeah, become a student again. Learn, challenge yourself. Just because you're 25 years in, you've been on SWAT for 15 years, and you've been a firearms instructor for 20 years, guess what, Cupcake? You don't know everything.
Yeah, and some new guy will pass you up if you're not on your game.
Yeah, absolutely. and you show more quality saying, all right, I want to try this because I've never done it and I want to learn how to do this, versus I don't have time for that shit. I'm a well-versed, seasoned veteran firearms instructor. Yeah, you just lost your students right there with those two different categories really quickly. And I've been subject to both of them. I've been a great learner and I've been not a great learner, or, kind of stuck in my ways. And you got to break out of that mold if you want to provide quality training to an agency. You've got to be willing to be a great student first. I think that's super, super important.
Yeah, and it's hard to, I think probably a good closing point here is in terms of building out your training and scaling it out to the masses, if you will, is making it sustainable. How do you do it in a way that you don't run out of money or burn out your instructors or frankly run out of ideas?
Yeah. Bring people in, test stuff, come up with new stuff. Oh, the other thing you have to do too is watch what's going on. I watched a lot of body cam videos to the point where it kind of got old for me towards the end, where I was tired of watching cops do stuff and having to sit there and pick apart what they did and didn't do and use that for training. And we used it's valuable, but for me towards the end. But anyway, you get the point. Learn from what's going on in the current conditions. Take scenarios from all over the country. Recreate a Boston Marathon bombing. Recreate that big one. Recreate something small that, maybe you have, an armed citizen who put down a mass shooter, and that we want to train our cops to properly identify who's friend and foe. Not just pull the trigger because someone has a gun in their hand, right? A simple, very context, right? So I think kind of to wrap it up, we talked really heavy about the quality of training and what's going to come out as the most efficient and most productive training. But going back to the DC officer, and I think her first name was Marika, and I hope I said that correctly. And I say this because she's not with us anymore, right? Every cop, when they finish the academy, goes through a swearing-in process, right? We put up our hand and we swear to our higher power, and we swear to our community that we're going to uphold the law no matter what is thrown at us. Bullets, fires, car crashes. But nowhere in there did it say bullets from my own peers. Let that sink in. Nowhere in there, none of us agreed that I'm willing to take a bullet from my own peer because of neglect, because of accidents, because of complacency. So if you do anything with your training, and let's say you got a badass program, wherever you are in the country, right? Just stop for a minute, get a few good-minded people that are on the same page as you, and go through your training. Can we make it safer? Can we make it better? Are we going too fast? Are we going too slow? Ask yourself all these questions. Find the book, Training at the Speed of Light. It's backed by Lieutenant Colonel Grossman. It is a very good book it's a little older, but it's a very good book, a very easy read about reality-based training. And in the back of that book, I have it at home, there's 32 officers that have been killed in the line of duty at training, most of them by gunfire. And when you read those things, you become very sad. You sad for the person and their families that lost their lives, and you feel sad for the person that's involved because they'll probably never. I can't even imagine what kind of pain they go through with that, right? And you read these things, and there are numerous flags.
It's preventable. Yeah, that's
numerous. Yeah. Like big red indicators that people saw. They didn't say anything for one reason or another, or whatever the case is. So it cannot happen. You cannot kill another officer in training. Cannot. And that should be your mentality if you're a boss, if you're a trainer, if you're a supervisor leading training. Hell, if you're a student, we cannot get anyone killed in this training. And so that's kind of a real profound way to end. But I think it's really important that she doesn't die in vain. Like something good comes out of this situation, as tragic and as effed up as it is. Something good comes out of this, that, everyone that's involved in training, take a look at your training.
Yeah, let's not keep relearning that lesson. It's enough of that.
Yeah.
That book, Training at the Speed of Life, is written by Kenneth Murray. It's a little hard to find because it is more of a textbook. It's an older book, but you could find it if you look for it. I think sort of my takeaway on this is, your training has to be safe to be sustainable first and foremost, right? But philosophically, you also have to look at, from a sustainability standpoint, being able to pass the torch at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where, Dan and I can go put a class together and we can run it and it could be safe and we could be all these things. But, if you think your training is bulletproof, literally bulletproof, then you have to take that template and be able to hand it to someone else and make sure that they can run it, and it can also be safe and effective and challenging and relevant and all those things. And so you have to think about passing the torch and what are the mechanisms that you can put in place that make it objectively and measurably relevant and measurably repeatable, something that is, not only is it safe, but it's safe every time we run it. It's safe even when someone else runs it, and so those best practices have to be practices. It has to be something that you implement every single time. And so things like not letting commanders in the room with guns because, I'm just watching. It's like, no, there's a safety checkpoint.
Yeah.
This is the process. This is the procedure.
Or why do I got to take my baton out? You really think I'm going to extend my baton and hit this guy in the defensive tactics room? No.
It's not the point.
But the way we do business is XYZ. We don't let live guns in. We don't bring batons in. I've got 600 canisters of frickin' OC spray because that always seemed to manage to slip through, right? You're not going to spray anyone. However, you could bust the lid off of it and spray everyone.
And importantly, if they're not supposed to be there, but they are. Why is the question?
Why? What happened? What was the breakdown?
And to go back to your point relating to passing the torch and making it safe, because this is, I think, relevant from your perspective is, you did that position for so long and left a legacy. I think I would like to think that I helped and I participated in some of that process of really changing the culture of training at our department at that time, and hopefully that has sustained. But to your point about the officers listed at the end of that book, and also to this incident in DC and not letting her name be in vain, is there's a lot of institutional knowledge that comes to bear in running training, and all of these things. It's easy to get wrapped up in, I have this great idea for training. We're going to do this, counter ambush, counter assault, bombing incident. It's going to be epic. There's going to be explosions and gunfire, and it's going to be, just chaos, and it's going to be great. People are going to learn so much.
Scenario only Delta can solve, right?
Right.
Okay, well, check fire here.
Yeah. Okay. Like, hold on a second. Like, we also have to make it safe.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. I want to make it. Yeah. I want to make this epic training. And so, just seeing that from a 360, from the balcony view part of it is, all right. Like, let's make it all these things, but let's also make it safe. And I just want listeners who are thinking about making training awesome. There's a whole lot that goes into that, and so learn from the mistakes of those behind you. Good, bad, or indifferent.
And my time out there, for those listening, and I know there's probably folks that were involved listening. Thank you, Mike. I had a great idea factory rocking. I mean, that thing was running 24/7. But if I don't have people in the idea factory, putting it together, it doesn't happen, right? And it doesn't happen well, and it doesn't happen safely. But we were very fortunate, and I can't even put a list together that 50, 60, 80 people that were involved in that 3+ years out there that we did stuff. And we did it really, this hour that we've been talking didn't really put into context the volume of what we put out.
It was a lot of work.
And we put out some whiz-bang scenarios and some serious shit. And lastly, I want to say to all the cops still out there, running and gunning on the streets, I'm proud of you guys and gals. You do a fantastic job. I've seen it here in Tucson, and I've seen it, come. It's kind of nice to sit back and go, because for 3 years you're questioning yourself, going, am I doing the right stuff here? Are we on the right track? And then without going into detail, specific incidents come out and you hear about how well officers performed. And, obviously they were able to save their lives and other people's lives and stop threats and do all these different things. I mean, all kinds of stuff, right? Not just gunfire, but all kinds of stuff. And I think that is the reward that I get at being an old fat retired dude now is I get to see that what I did was all worth it. Everything that we did, and see the work that they do. So thank you guys. Keep rocking. Don't make any headlines, at least the bad ones. Keep doing your thing. And lastly, this is where our podcast comes into effect. Take care of yourself first. Don't forget about yourself in all this.
Yeah, Dan's doing a lot of good work on the wellness and mental health side of things, which is a big deal. And it's
a big deal.
We neglect it when we're young, man. And then we get a little bit older and we're like, fuck.
Yeah, I hit that, where it's like, oh shit, okay, this is what running out of fuel looks like, and I'm coasting in from 30,000 feet wondering if I'm going to land this bitch or crash.
Limp into the carrier there.
But I had a great career, and I met some amazing people like Mike, and it was fun. So if you're train with that passion, it'll come through and everyone will follow.
Well, and from a leadership standpoint for me and for my thanks to Dan is, it's one thing to have a good idea fairy or two to help with stuff, but it doesn't mean anything if you don't have a receptive place to put those ideas. And so, Dan was always receptive. I could go to him with stuff and he would check me where I needed it, and he would take the ideas and run with them when they were relevant. It was a key part in my development was, you think you have these great ideas. Well, let's actually, like we said, let's pressure test them. Let's put them out there and see if they actually work. And it helped me grow and learn about training and scaling my training. It's like, okay, well, you can run this scenario. Can these other people run this scenario? And that was a key part of it. But, from a leadership perspective, and having a mentor who was willing to listen and hear me out on those things was a big deal, because not only did it give me that ownership and buy-in and pride of what we were trying to do, but it helped me learn, okay, well, how do you build a safety plan into this?
Yeah.
You could teach well, right? Yeah. Like I think at the time I remember thinking like, yeah, I'm a pretty good teacher. I can convey these ideas, convey these lessons, but I also needed to make sure, like, how do I account for some of these people that are going to come through that maybe aren't as cognizant of the safety hazards and the safety risks. And I had to temper that, and I think that it was a good laboratory for me to do that and grow. And I think for anyone listening that is maybe in a position like Dan is, or was, or finds themselves in that position, listen out to those people that are coming to you with that stuff and try to foster that, because it went a long way in helping me grow as a trainer and as a, young junior kind of leader type. So thanks for that, and thanks for being a crucial part of my development too.
My pleasure. It was fun. Not every day, but it was fun.
Yeah, we covered some of those in our last episode on Tag Tangents about that. So, all right, guys. Well, we hope this was beneficial for both audiences. Make sure if you're listening to one and haven't listened to the other, we're Tag Tangents, Tactical Tangents. You can find us on tacticaltangents.com. We're on all the outlets.
Yeah, Thin Brewed line. We're on most of the outlets, Apple, Google Podcasts, all that kind of stuff. You can find us on just about every social media platform. And our goal from ours is, I think, same with Mike, is just to help cops. That's it. I love doing my coffee thing, and anything that I can share with cops that I learned from. That's all it's about. So we have some really good wellness stuff in there. Really good experts across the country that have spoken on our podcast, and so it's worth it.
Yeah, Filthy Pirate coffee is also delicious, and that's what I've been drinking this whole time.
Low acid, super smooth. So if you've been a cop drinking shitty Circle K coffee for a long time, give it a try. See what it's all about.
All right, guys, that's all we got, right? Anything else?
See ya.
All right, guys, that's all we got for tonight. This episode is brought to you by Drip Drop. Drip Drop Oral Rehydration Solution is an electrolyte powder that you mix with water. It was formulated by a doctor for quick absorption. I work in the desert, and it only takes a few hours in the heat, wearing body armor, carrying around a bunch of gear before I start feeling like crap and fall behind the curve in dehydration. Drip Drop keeps you in the fight so you can finish the mission and rehab for the next one. Go get you some at dripdrop.com or on Amazon, or ask your supply guy to find it for you.
This episode is also brought to you by Dry Fire Mag. Ammo is hard to find these days, and you need to stay proficient by working your dry fire training. Dry fire mag solves the common and annoying problem in dry fire of constantly having to rack your slide to reset the trigger. With dry fire mag, all you do is clear your weapon, load this training mag up, and work on your trigger work. Check them out on dryfiremag.com.
Don't forget that we put out new episodes on the 1st and the 15th of every month. If you like what we're doing, you can head over to Patreon, give us $1 for each new episode. That money's going to go back into bringing you good content. If you want to interact with us, you could find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We are at TacTangents. You can also email info@tacticaltangents.com. And one last thing, our Facebook discussion group. We've got a little group going on Facebook. If you go to the groups tab on our page, you can join it. We've got more followers on our page than we have in the group. So I know there's some of you out there following the Facebook page that are on Facebook that are not in the group. Lots of like-minded people in there. So come hang out with us. All right. That's all we got. Good talk.